Our last task for the VMware Workstation series will be to install Windows Server 2022. Like we did for OpenSense, we'll follow a similar process for building the virtual machine. And for the installation, I won't go through the exact step-by-step like we did for VirtualBox. If you do need an exact step-by-step guide, feel free to watch that video. I'll link it in the video description below. And these are the tasks that I would like us to accomplish for this section. First, we want to create a new virtual machine, and we'll call it DC-01. We'll change the network adapter to be VMnet10. We'll install Windows Server 2022 on the virtual machine, install VMware tools on the new virtual machine, change the time zone if needed, enable remote desktop connection, change the IP address to have the following IP scheme. We want the IP address to be 172.20.20.20. The subnet mask is going to be 255.255.255.0. The gateway will be 172.20.20.254. And the preferred DNS server will be 172.20.20.20. And lastly, we'll change the computer name to be DC-01. To begin, let's create another virtual machine for Windows Server 2022. Similar to what we did for OpenSense, I'll click on the Home tab first. And I could click on Create a New Virtual Machine. But let's say that by mistake you close the Home tab. You can always click on File, then New Virtual Machine, and create it like this. So we'll leave typical for our new virtual machine, and then click Next. I'll leave the option to install the operating system later. We'll leave the guest operating system to be Microsoft Windows, and then we'll change the version to be Windows Server 2022. We'll name our new virtual machine DC-01. Since this will be our first domain controller, we'll leave the storage location as is, and then click Next. I'll leave the size of the hard drive to be 60 gigabytes, and I'll change the option to Store Virtual Disk as a single file. Then click Next. I'll then click on Customize Hardware. I'll increase the size of our memory to be 4 gigabytes or 4096 megabytes. I'll leave the number of processors to be 2. I'll select CD/DVD option and then click on Use ISO image file. Then click Browse and find my Windows Server 2022 file and click Open. And lastly, for our network adapter, I'll change the option from NAT to Custom. Then select VMnet10. Click Close, then Finish. I'll click on Power on this virtual machine. And wait for Windows to boot. You'll get this message to press any key to boot from CD or DVD. This option goes by pretty quick, so it can be easily missed. Ensure that you're clicking inside of the virtual machine window when you press your key, or else your host computer will register the key press and not your virtual machine. You can see I clicked inside of my virtual machine window, and my cursor disappears, and then when I press my spacebar key, it's now loading Windows. After the boot process is completed, I'll quickly go through the setup process. Ensure you select Windows Server 2022 Data Center Evaluation with Desktop Experience for the version, and Custom for a fresh installation of Windows Server 2022. I'll fast forward a bit when the installation is completed. And once the install is done, it will reboot automatically, or you can click on Restart Now if you don't want to wait. Once the reboot is completed, I'll create a new password, which will be the DOM Control 2024 ! capital D and capital C. And once I'm done with my password, I'll click on Finish, and we're brought to the Windows logon screen where it's asking me to press Ctrl-Alt-Delete to unlock the screen. You can see we have this little 3-key icon, and if I hover over it, you can see it's labeled to send Ctrl-Alt-Delete to this virtual machine. So we'll press that. And now you can see that my lock screen is unlocked and it's asking for a password. This is that DOM control password that I created earlier. After we log in, the Server Manager application opens up. But before we do anything, since this is a newly built virtual machine, we need to install a software called VMware Tools that will help to improve the performance and management of this virtual machine. Similar to how newly built computers require drivers to enable more features, this is the same idea. To install VMware Tools, we can either right-click on the Virtual Machine tab, then click on Install VMware Tools, or we could click on the VM option in the top menu and select Install VMware Tools. This will mount the VMware Tools ISO as a DVD, so I'll go into my File Explorer, then this PC. Right-click on VMware Tools disk drive and click on Install or Run Program from your media. We'll click Next on the Welcome to VMware Tools Setup Wizard. We'll leave Typical selected and then click Next. And then I'll click Install. I'll click on Finish once the installation is completed. Then I will say yes to reboot my system. Once the reboot is completed, I'll sign back in. I'll make my window full screen. And I'll go back to View, then Stretch Guess, and I will select Keep Aspect Ratio Stretch. And now we can see our Windows server is now in full screen mode. Once I'm logged back into Windows, I'll click on Local Server and I'll make the following changes. First thing I'll change is the time zone. It's currently set to Pacific time, but I'm in Eastern Standard Time, so I will make that change. This might be different for you if you're in a different country or region. Next, I'll change the IP address. I want to use 172.20.20.20 for the IP address, 255.255.255 for the subnet mask, and 172.20.20.254 for the default gateway. For the preferred DNS server, I'll use 172.20.20.20, which is the IP address for this server because we will be promoting this server to be a domain controller. Then I'll click OK and then close. Next, I'll enable Remote Desktop, so I can remote into the server to manage it remotely. And lastly, we'll change our computer name. I'll click on Computer Name, then go to Change. And I'll change the computer name to be DC-01. Then I'll reboot once I'm done. And once it's back up, I'll sign back in. And we can see the changes that I made are still there. Okay, so this series of videos were just to showcase how VMware Workstation works. We've downloaded and installed VMware Workstation, we've created a new network adapter, we've installed our OpenSense router with a LAN and WAN adapter, and we've just completed installing Windows Server 2022 and make some small configuration changes. So you could see how VMware Workstation really differs from VirtualBox. They both do the same thing, but really they just do it differently. And that's really the only difference that there is. I mean, there is some other features that's embedded in VMware Workstation that's not in VirtualBox, and same idea. There are some things in VirtualBox that's not in VMware Workstation, but you could see that if you want to do virtualization, either of these platforms will work for you. And with that, we've completed all of the tasks for VMware Workstation. So next we'll move on to Microsoft Hyper-V. So if you like VMware Workstation or VirtualBox and would prefer to use one of these for the remainder of this project, you're free to do so. But if you haven't seen what Hyper-V looks like, I'll advise you to stick around and watch those remaining videos. Haven't seen what Hyper-V could do, and maybe you might like it more, maybe it's the interface, or you like how it builds a virtual machine, this might be worth your time. So I'll see you in those videos. So thank you very much for watching. If you find the information helpful, please feel free to like the video and subscribe to the channel for future videos. Thank you.